Ministers and deputy ministers, the DSG, Mama Action, I think I see you there, senior officials, business people, friends and colleagues from the BRIC countries. It's a great pleasure to be here with you and to share a few thoughts. I think when the program director asked if there were any Brazilians in the house, the pirates and chief supporters got very upset. And I suspect that is why we didn't get much of a response. So I'm not doing one of these, right? Colleagues, on a more serious note, I'm here to deliver a brief message on behalf of the BRICS Business Council. This is a council of 25 members, all nominated by the business formations of their respective countries, 5 from South Africa, 5 from Brazil, and so on and so forth. The council is 10 years old today, so we celebrated a decade, and in that decade, I think we have dovetailed with our respective governments and entrenched the position of business within the BRICS formation. Many people thought that the concept of a BRICS Business Council, which incidentally was advanced by South Africa in Durban in 2013, and our inaugural chairperson was another Brazilian, Mr. Patrice Motsepe. So I told you, DSG, we're truly multicultural. So 10 years ago, I think most people thought the council was an idea. It wouldn't really, probably fizzle out. And I'm pleased to tell you that in the 10 years, this is what we can reflect on. Firstly, the contribution of BRICS to global GDP in purchase power parity terms is now 32% of global GDP. If you want to place that in some context, the G7, which has always been held as one of the leading formations, contributes 30% to global GDP. So BRICS has narrowly eclipsed the G7. That's quite an accomplishment. And I might also add that our trade as South Africa with BRICS has also grown. So if we compare the period 2017 to 2021, that 4-year consolidated period, and remember 18 months of those 4 years were affected and afflicted by COVID. But in that 4-year period, we demonstrated a 44% growth in trade. So if there are any people that are wondering, so you can give a round of applause. So if anybody's wondering whether it makes sense to be part of BRICS, well, I think wonder again. Because it is a sizable chunk of global GDP, and certainly our trade has grown. But we also analyze the numbers and we assess the situation. And what is manifest to us is, of course, we are running trade deficits and some uneven trading patterns with our BRIC partners. Now, that's not a problem per se, because these are much bigger economies than ours, so you would naturally expect a deficit. So these deficits we see as a council being an opportunity. It's an opportunity because it allows us, and this is really important for this audience tonight, it allows us to have a look at what are those products, goods, services, and or sectors of the economy that we can potentially start to export out of our country to the BRIC nations. So this will be a priority for the next, certainly for the next 5 years, is to identify where do these opportunities reside for small, medium, and large business. Now, the other thing that is overt is that we tend to export a lot of raw materials, but then we import finished products. And again, we will always be an exporter of minerals and commodities because we are rich in minerals and commodities. All we need to try and do is balance out some of these uneven trade patterns through partnerships, through complementarity, by producing these products in our country. Now let me give you an example of what I mean. Because we're speaking so much about Brazilians this evening, what fascinated me with this exercise that we did is that South Africa's second biggest export to Brazil is centrifuge machines. Okay, now TG is a medical person. I didn't even know we produced and exported centrifuges, let alone it being the second biggest export to Brazil. So these are if we're competitive to sell these centrifuges to Brazil, there must be a market somewhere else. And we've got to look at the complementarity. Now, what do I mean by complementarity? I mean, we've got to look at where do South Africa's strengths lie, where do Brazil's strengths lie, etc. And we've got to balance out the trade on that basis. So if we can do it in Brazil with centrifuges, no reason why we can't do it in Russia and in India and in China as well. So those are the opportunities I want to open your eyes to this evening, because I'm sure that 90% of you in this room are business people. And I even see a Serbian businessman here at the back there, right? Okay, so why do I raise that? I raise that for another key priority, which I'm going to finish off on. Okay. The theme for this year's BRICS Business Summit is BRICS and Africa. And it's a long slogan, but I'm just going to cover the important elements of it. It speaks to enhancing economic collaboration, sustainable development, and inclusive multilateralism. So it's not by accident that this is the theme, because we are chairing BRICS this year, and we get to chair it every 5 years, so we need to maximize and optimize when we chair. So in the context of that, South Africa remains the fulcrum between, on the one hand, the African continent, and in particular the African Continental Free Trade Area. And what is the free trade area in my mind? It's aggregating the African markets. Instead of having 54 de-aggregated, insularized markets, we look to coordinate the volumes, the scale of these 54 markets, which add up to an economy of almost $4 trillion. An economy, by the way, that will grow by 2050 to $16 trillion. Now you're starting to get size, scale, and mass. And the most important thing here is that Africa presents the next frontier of opportunity. And I know the DP spoke about this recently as well, because he spoke about localization. Localization, industrialization, enhanced added value manufacturing are all the ingredients that lead to stable economies. And that is what we are trying to achieve here. So remember, South Africa remains the fulcrum, the gateway between the African continent, the free trade area on the one hand, and on the other hand, the BRIC markets, which represent over 30% of global GDP. And we are the conduit, the facilitator as South Africa. So you add those two markets together, and we're not talking the Minister of International Cooperation, Durka Minister Naledi Pandor will tell you, we're not doing these things for the here and now. We're doing a lot of this for the future, for the young people in this room. DP, you and I, we've had our time. we're ready to retire soon. We are doing, or maybe the DP is more energetic than I think. But we are doing this for the future. So do you know that there are 2 countries that have got a population in excess of 1 billion people at the moment? The most populous country is India. Second most populous is China. There will only be one other country that by the turn of the century exceeds 1 billion inhabitants, and that is Nigeria. And that is in the African continent. So if you think we're kind of doing these things for the today and the here and now, that's not the case. Africa represents the next frontier of growth. And incidentally, I said to you about a $16 trillion economy by 2050. Africa's population, which is 1.35 billion inhabitants now, will almost double by 2050. Now, why am I giving you all these statistics? Because you're all business people, and I know you're working out all the sums and calculations already in your heads. But I'm also giving it to you for another reason. Africa has the youngest population, and it's a population that is tech savvy. And we seek partnerships with our BRIC partners. Partnerships around technology, know-how, skills, so that we can industrialize and digitalize to give full expression to that potential that resides in Africa. But the bottom line here is that BRICS and the African Union working together represent a significant market access opportunity for any business futuristically in our country. I've overstayed my welcome, but I thought I should just share a couple of these things with you as you make your own calculations and assessments as business people. And we've never said we're going to compromise existing trading partners. What we're saying is we are going to look at this, what represents South African businesses' best interests. That's the way we're looking at it. So we don't have favoritism here. We're saying we're discarding or leaving out this one, favoring that one. We are looking at, as any other country does in the world, where do the best opportunities for business lie, and where do the best economic collaborations lie. And certainly BRIC is a very attractive proposition. So let me end off by again thanking you for this invitation. I see that the stage has been heavily dominated by women, and this is Bridget Khalebe is sitting in front there somewhere, I think.